to trigger an exit so powerful that it left the entire studio in complete silence. Kevin Hart walked onto that set with a smile. He was there to talk about his latest comedy tour, his movies, and his family. The usual stuff. But from the moment he sat down across from Piers Morgan, something felt off. The energy was wrong. The handshake was cold. And the first question out of Piers's mouth should have been a warning sign. "So Kevin, let's talk about your height," Piers said, leaning back in his chair with that smirk he always wore when he thought he was being clever. Kevin laughed it off. He always did. "Man, we really starting with that? I thought we were going to talk about the movies, the tour." But Piers wasn't done. "No, seriously though, do you ever feel like you have to overcompensate? You know, being shorter than most leading men in Hollywood?" The audience got quiet. This wasn't playful banter. This was something else. Kevin's smile stayed on his face, but you could see it. That little shift in his eyes. He was already clocking this guy. "Overcompensate?" Kevin repeated. "Nah, man. I just work hard. That's it. I don't need to compensate for anything." Piers waved his hand dismissively, like he was swatting away Kevin's answer. Right. But you have to admit, there's something about shorter men in entertainment. They always seem to be shouting, always trying to be the loudest person in the room. Do you think that's you?" Kevin tilted his head. His jaw tightened just a bit. "I'm loud because I'm a comedian, Piers. That's literally my job. To make people laugh. To have energy. It's got nothing to do with my height." But Piers just kept going. He leaned forward now, getting into what he probably thought was some hard-hitting journalist mode. "Let's move on then. Your personal life. You've had some controversies, haven't you? The cheating scandal. How do you expect people to take you seriously as a family man when you've made those kinds of mistakes?" And there it was. The switch from annoying to outright disrespectful. Kevin's whole face changed. The smile was completely gone now. "Hold on," Kevin said, raising his hand. "We're going to go there? Right now? On television?" Piers shrugged, acting like he didn't understand why Kevin would be upset. "It's a fair question. You're a public figure. You put yourself out there. People want to know." "People want to know, or you want to know," Kevin shot back. "Because there's a difference between asking a real question and just trying to embarrass somebody on your show." The audience was dead silent now. You could feel the tension radiating from that stage. The cameras were still rolling. Nobody knew what to do. Piers sat up straighter, and his voice got that edge to it. That condescending tone he used when he felt challenged. "I'm simply asking questions that everyone's thinking. If you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." Kevin shook his head slowly. "Tough questions? Man, there's a difference between tough questions and disrespect. You started this interview by going at my height. Then you jumped straight to my personal life, my family, my mistakes. You didn't ask me about my work. You didn't ask me about what I'm doing now. You just went for the lowest hanging fruit you could grab." Piers laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive. But this is what I do. I ask the questions other people are afraid to ask." "Nah," Kevin said, and his voice was calm now. Deadly calm. "What you do is you sit in that chair and you try to make your guests look small so you can look big. That's what this is. This ain't journalism. This is ego." The color started rising in Piers's face. He didn't like being called out. Not on his own show. "Now wait just a minute. I've interviewed presidents, prime ministers, celebrities far bigger than you. And you're going to sit there and lecture me about how to do my job?" Kevin stood up. Just like that. He took his microphone off his lapel and set it down on the arm of the chair. "I'm not lecturing you about anything. I'm just telling you that I don't need to sit here and be disrespected. You can interview whoever you want. You can ask whatever questions you think make you look smart. but you're gonna do it without me. Piers looked genuinely shocked. Like, he couldn't believe this was happening. You're walking out? We're in the middle of an interview. Yeah, we were, Kevin said. But this stopped being an interview about 5 minutes ago. This became you trying to tear me down for whatever reason. Maybe it makes you feel important. Maybe you think it's good television. I don't know, and I don't care. Piers stood up too now, and his voice got louder. This is incredibly unprofessional. You agreed to come on this show. Kevin turned back to look at him, and there was something in his expression that wasn't anger. It was disappointment. You know what's unprofessional? Inviting someone onto your show and then ambushing them. Asking them about their height like it's some kind of joke. Bringing up their personal struggles like it's entertainment. That's unprofessional. I bring up what's relevant, Piers insisted, his face getting redder. Your height is part of who you are as a public figure. Your scandals are part of your history. And my humanity? Kevin asked. Is that part of it too? Or did you forget that part? The studio audience started murmuring. You could hear people shifting in their seats. This was getting uncomfortable for everyone. Piers pointed at Kevin, his finger jabbing the air. You can't just walk off a live show because you don't like the questions. Watch me, Kevin said simply. So Piers started moving around the desk, like he was going to physically stop Kevin from leaving. This is absurd. You're being childish. This is exactly what I was talking about. You can't handle criticism. Kevin stopped walking and turned around one more time. His voice was still calm, but there was steel in it. Criticism? Man, you don't even know what that word means. Criticism is constructive. What you're doing is just being mean for ratings. And I'm not going to be a part of it. Mean? Piers practically shouted. I'm being mean? I'm asking you legitimate questions about your life and your career. You asked me if I overcompensate for being short, Kevin said flatly. In what world is that a legitimate question? You didn't ask me about my work ethic. You didn't ask me about how I built my career from nothing. You didn't ask me about the tour I'm on right now that's selling out arenas. You went straight for the cheap shots. Piers crossed his arms over his chest. Maybe because that's what people actually care about. They don't want another puff piece interview where everyone pretends everything is perfect. Nobody said everything is perfect, Kevin replied. But there's a way to have real conversations without being disrespectful. You could have asked me about my growth. You could have asked me what I learned from my mistakes. Instead, you just wanted to throw them in my face on live television. The cameras were still rolling. The producers were probably losing their minds in the control room. This was not how this interview was supposed to go. Piers uncrossed his arms and put his hands on his hips. Fine. Let me ask you then. What did you learn from your mistakes? What's your growth? Kevin shook his head. Nah, man. You don't get to do that. You don't get to spend the first part of this interview trying to tear me down and then suddenly act like you want to have a real conversation. That's not how this works. This is ridiculous, Piers muttered, running his hand through his hair. Absolutely ridiculous. You know what's ridiculous? Kevin said, and now there was some heat in his voice. What's ridiculous is that you have this platform. You have this show. You could use it to have actual meaningful conversations with people, but instead, you use it to try to embarrass them, to make them uncomfortable, to get some viral moment that you can clip and put on social media. That's what's ridiculous. Piers's face was fully red now. How dare you? How dare you come onto my show and tell me how to do my job? I've been doing this for decades. And maybe that's the problem, Kevin said quietly. Maybe you've been doing it so long that you forgot why you started. You forgot that there are real people sitting in that chair. Not just content, not just clickbait, people. The audience actually started clapping. Just a few people at first, but then more joined in. Piers looked around, furious. Don't you applaud this, Piers said to the audience. This is him running away from accountability. But Kevin wasn't running. He was walking, slowly, deliberately, toward the exit. Piers followed him. "You're really going to do this? You're really going to walk off my show?" Kevin stopped one last time at the edge of the stage. "I already did. This interview is over." "We still have 20 minutes left," Piers protested. "Then I guess you better find something else to talk about," Kevin said. "Maybe you can spend 20 minutes talking about why your guests keep walking out on you." That hit a nerve. Piers's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's not... This doesn't happen." "Well, it's happening now," Kevin said. And then he looked directly at one of the cameras. Not at Piers. At the camera. At the audience at home. "To everybody watching, I came here to have a good time. To talk about comedy. To talk about making people laugh. But sometimes you gotta know when to walk away. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And this man showed me exactly who he is in the first 5 minutes." Piers was sputtering now. "You can't just talk to the camera. This is my show." "Not anymore, it's not," Kevin said. "At least not with me on it." And with that, Kevin Hart walked off the stage. The audience erupted. Some were cheering. Some were gasping. Some were just sitting there, with their mouths open, trying to process what they just witnessed. Piers stood there alone on the stage, his face crimson, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He looked at the audience, then at the cameras, and then back at where Kevin had disappeared backstage. "Well," Piers finally said, trying to regain some composure, "I suppose that's that. Kevin Hart, everyone, unable to handle a simple conversation." But nobody was buying it. You could see it in the audience's faces. They weren't on his side. They saw what happened. They saw who started it. They saw who kept pushing. They saw who turned what should have been a fun interview into a confrontation. One of the producers came out on stage, whispering something to Piers. He waved them away angrily. "We'll be right back," he said to the camera, but his voice was shaking. "After these messages." The lights dimmed for the commercial break, but the damage was done. In the span of just a few minutes, what was supposed to be a routine celebrity interview had turned into a masterclass in standing up for yourself. Backstage, Kevin was taking deep breaths. His team surrounded him, asking if he was okay. He nodded. "Yeah, I'm good. I couldn't sit there anymore. That wasn't an interview. That was an attack." His publicist was on the phone, probably doing damage control. But Kevin didn't care about that right now. He did what he had to do. He drew a line. Meanwhile, back on the stage during the commercial break, Piers was pacing. This is unacceptable," he kept saying to anyone who would listen. "Who does he think he is?" But the crew members were exchanging glances. They knew. They all knew. They'd seen Piers do this before. Push guests. Provoke them. Act like he was just asking tough questions when really he was just being cruel. When the show came back from commercial, Piers tried to spin it. He tried to make it seem like Kevin was the problem. Like Kevin couldn't handle the heat. But anyone watching knew the truth. The truth was simple. Kevin Hart came on that show in good faith. He was ready to talk, to laugh, to promote his work, to connect with the audience. But Piers Morgan had other plans. He wanted drama. He wanted conflict. He wanted a moment. And he got one. Just not the one he wanted. Instead of a moment where he looked like some fearless interviewer, he got a moment where he looked like exactly what he was. A bully. Someone who uses his position of power to try to make others feel small. But Kevin didn't let him. Kevin stood up. Kevin spoke his truth. Kevin walked away. And in doing so, Kevin showed everyone watching that you don't have to tolerate disrespect. You don't have to sit there and take it just because someone has a microphone and a camera. You have the power to say no. You have the power to leave. The interview that was supposed to last an hour ended up lasting less than 15 minutes. 15 minutes that felt like an eternity. 15 minutes that went from awkward to uncomfortable to explosive. Piers tried to continue the show. He brought out his next guest. He tried to act like nothing happened, but the energy was wrong. The whole studio felt it. The audience felt it. Even the cameras seemed to feel it. What was supposed to be Piers Morgan's show had become Kevin Hart's moment. A moment of dignity. A moment of self-respect. A moment of knowing your worth. Kevin didn't yell. He didn't curse. He didn't throw anything. He simply refused to participate in his own humiliation. And that refusal, that simple act of standing up and walking away, was more powerful than any comeback or witty remark could have been. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't about who won an argument. This wasn't about who got the last word. This was about a man who knew his value and refused to let anyone diminish it. Piers could sit in that chair and act like he was the victim. He could tell his viewers that Kevin was too sensitive. He could spin it however he wanted. But the tape doesn't lie. The footage shows exactly what happened. It shows a host who started an interview with an insult, who followed it up with more insults, who dug into personal pain for no reason other than entertainment, who pushed and pushed until his guest had enough, and it shows a guest who gave him chances, who tried to laugh it off, who tried to redirect, who tried to have a real conversation, until he realized that a real conversation was never the goal. Kevin's team was already talking about the fallout, about how this would play in the media, about what the headlines would say. But Kevin was quiet. He was processing. "You know what?" Kevin finally said to his team. "I don't regret it. Not for a second. That man disrespected me on live television, and I wasn't about to sit there and smile through it." His manager nodded. "You did the right thing." "I know I did," Kevin said. "Because at the end of the day, I gotta be able to look at myself in the mirror. And I couldn't do that if I let him talk to me like that." Back on the stage, Piers was wrapping up the show. He tried to end on a high note. Tried to make some joke about needing tougher guests. But it fell flat. The audience barely laughed. Because they knew what they witnessed. They witnessed a host abuse his power. They witnessed a guest stand up for himself. They witnessed integrity in action. As the credits rolled and the lights came up, the audience filed out. They were all talking about it, replaying it in their minds, already thinking about how they would tell their friends and family what they saw. Did you see his face when Kevin just stood up? I couldn't believe Piers kept pushing like that. That question about his height was so rude. Kevin handled that perfectly. The conversation spilled out into the lobby, into the parking lot, into the world, and that's how it goes. That's how a moment becomes a movement. Kevin Hart didn't just walk off a talk show that day. He set a standard. He showed people that it's okay to walk away, that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to demand respect. And Piers Morgan didn't just lose a guest. He showed his true colors. He revealed that beneath all the bluster and the tough guy routine, he was just someone who enjoyed making others uncomfortable. The interview became legendary for all the wrong reasons. At least for Piers. For Kevin, it became a defining moment. A moment that showed his character, his strength, his unwillingness to compromise his dignity for anyone. In the green room afterward, Kevin's phone was blowing up. Messages of support. People thanking him. Other celebrities sharing their own stories of uncomfortable interviews, of hosts who crossed the line. Kevin read through them, nodding. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Yeah, I think a lot of people needed to see that." Because that's what it was really about. It wasn't about Kevin Hart versus Piers Morgan. It was about standing up for yourself. About knowing when enough is enough. About understanding that some things are more important than staying on camera. Your dignity, your self-respect, your humanity. Those things matter more than any interview. more than any show, more than any host who thinks he's bigger than his guests. Kevin packed up his things. He thanked the crew members who came up to him, who told him quietly that they supported him, who said they wished more guests would do what he did. And then he left. He walked out of that studio with his head held high, not in anger, not in shame, but in peace. Peace that comes from knowing you did the right thing. Peace that comes from not compromising who you are for who someone else wants you to be. The sun was setting as Kevin got into his car. His driver asked if he was okay. Kevin smiled. A real smile this time. Not the media smile. Not the camera smile. A genuine smile. "Yeah," he said. "I'm good. I'm really good." Because he was. He had just walked away from one of the biggest talk shows on television. He had just created what would probably be a media firestorm. He had just done something that would be talked about for years. And he felt good about it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is silence. Sometimes the biggest win is refusing to play the game. That Kevin understood that. He understood that Piers wanted a reaction, wanted him to get angry, to yell, to make a scene. And Kevin gave him a reaction, just not the one he wanted. Kevin gave him dignity, gave him calm, gave him a masterclass in self-respect. And as the car pulled away from the studio, Kevin looked back one time, at the building, at the place where he just made history. Not the kind of history Piers wanted, but the kind of history that matters. The kind where someone stood up for themselves. The kind where someone said enough is enough. The kind where someone showed that you don't have to accept disrespect, no matter who it's coming from. That's the story of what happened when Kevin Hart sat down with Piers Morgan. That's the story of an interview that went wrong. Or maybe it went exactly right. Depends on how you look at it. Because Kevin got to show the world who he really is. Not a celebrity. Not a comedian. Not a movie star. But a man. A man with standards. A man with boundaries. A man who knows his worth. And Piers got to show the world who he really is too. Not a journalist.